Hello everyone, Nubkeks here and welcome to my tier list for the Junkrat patch in Heroes of the Storm. The day tier is a little bit off, don't worry about that, it is for the Junkrat patch. And yeah, I'm going to be talking you through what are actually quite a few very large changes, I would say. I find this quite interesting because this is presumably the patch that BlizzCon's going to be played on, and through this patch and the last few balance tweaks that they've made, there's actually been some pretty significant switches and change-ups in the meta and in the heroes that I think we're going to be seeing moving forwards. So yeah, just a note here. Ooh, the lights are going. It's in the middle of a hurricane, so this could go badly. But what was I going to say? Yeah, I mean, I was just... this would be a little bit more speculative, perhaps, than some of the other tier lists, simply because there are, I feel, so many big changes. We'll see when we come to supports, for example. I think there's a lot of big questions. Warriors and supports in particular have been changed up. But supports, they had a lot of very big changes last patch, and it wasn't even fully come to grips with what those changes meant, and then they've gone and changed them again in pretty substantial ways. So yeah, we'll see all that as we go through. So I do have a 5-tier system, just so you know right at the start. Tier 3 is the default tier. This is the standard tier. When heroes are stronger than that, I move them up. When strongers are weaker, I move them down, and that's basically how I structure the list. We're going to go through this role by role to make things a little bit clearer. So we're going to start off with Warrior, because as you'll probably have noticed, the only tier 1 heroes that I've assigned here are Warriors, and there's a couple of big ones that are quite new, Johanna and Muradin, of course. So yeah, I think there's some pretty big shakeups happening to the Warrior role at the moment. So in tier 1, I've got ETC, Johanna, Garrosh, and Muradin. Tier 2, we've got Arthas and Nubkeks, Dahaka Diablo, Sonya, Stitches. In Tier 3, you have Tyrael, Zarya, Chen, and Leoric. And in Tier 4 are Tannis, Cho, D.Va, and Rexxar. Worth noting that although I have sorted the heroes between the tiers themselves, within the tiers, they're not sorted. So, you know, don't be like, it doesn't mean that ETC is stronger than Johanna or whatever. That's really not the purpose. It's just more of a broad guide across the tiers themselves. Okay, so yeah, let's talk about Johanna first. So Johanna got massive buffs in the last patch. I just put up a video on her actually where I show you some gameplay and talk through the talent builds and choices and what's going on there. But for instance, she got a 10% buff to her HP on an already very tanky, very survivable hero. So I actually think Johanna is incredibly strong right now. She does a surprising amount of damage. I think perhaps the most interesting thing about Johanna from a Hero League perspective for you going into it is that I think she's the hero to watch this patch because she's going to be very underrated. It was one of the things I found quite curious when I was doing streams or when I was playing Johanna, is I was getting a lot of feedback that surprised me of people saying that they thought Johanna was extremely weak, and apparently there's been a lot of discussion on Reddit and such that Johanna is very, very weak, which I didn't think was the case. I thought she was quite average, really, but not weak before they buffed her, and now post-buff, it was a very large buff, and I think it's quite easy to underestimate it. So I suspect a lot of people aren't going to be expecting Johanna to be strong, so you'll probably be very able to secure her in the draft if you wish to. And you'll be able to surprise people with like the amount of damage that she does, for example, just how effective she's going to be. I don't think people are going to be expecting it, at least at the start of this particular patch. Although, of course, the buff is already live, so do bear that in mind. Yeah, so big buffs to her HP. What Johanna does, one of the big things as well that this means is that she's not as dependent anymore either on being this counter physical damage dealer that she was kind of before. The raw survivability increases that she's received, that's just flexible survivability. And the way her new talents work, you can build your blind into doing things other than being a counter physical damage dealer thing. So yeah, I think Johanna, she's actually very, very flexible. She brings great wave clear, surprising amounts of damage, a good amount of CC too, especially when she's level 10, of course. Good initiation once she's level 10 only. So yeah, Johanna is definitely the hero to watch out for in this patch. Now, Muradin is another hero that's definitely worth mentioning because he has received a rework, and I expect this to have a pretty big impact on Muradin. The thing that really stands out for me is, of course, having heavy impact. That new talent, the talent that used to be level 16, which is a half-second stun on your dwarf toss, is now at level 7. And what that means is you've got a much more powerful CC chain, much more powerful initiation and lockdown chain available to you much earlier on in the game, significantly earlier on. And it definitely stands out to me, certainly as the strongest level 7 talent that's there available right now. So yeah, that's going to shake up Muradin's gameplay quite significantly. So I'd be expecting to see probably quite a lot more Murden going forwards. And this also brings me to the point then, looking at the tier 1 tanks, what do they all have in common? Every single one of these tanks brings a substantial amount of crowd control. They also bring a fairly decent amount of damage. Again, bear in mind, Johanna's been buffed. She'd be the one that would stand out as being quite weak on damage. They bring relatively decent damage, lots of crowd control, and they're all very difficult to kill. So I think that definitely is going to quite define the tank meta quite a lot moving forwards. Also the fact that I feel like there are 4 of these heroes, and even the tier 2 heroes are very strong as well. They're very, very strong as well. You know, Arthas and Stitches would certainly stand out to me as being heroes that are quite versatile on nearly every map and nearly every composition. They will work quite well in Hero League. So you've got a lot of options with Warrior, which means that you basically cannot ban people out of the Warrior. It's not like there's 1 or 2 that are overpowered. That's not the case. So I think that this will have actually quite a substantial impact on the meta. These big, strong crowd control, very difficult to kill warriors on the front line, that will be very important. It opens up the potential, of course, for more double support, because your front line, as it stands, is good enough on its own. It does open up a little bit of melee assassins as well. It opens up more options for solo lane. You don't necessarily need another frontliner to help out. So I think all that sort of stuff is interesting and definitely worth considering. Anything else that we need to mention here? Any big changes? I don't think so. Certainly Diva did get some buffs, but I feel that she's still probably a little bit underwhelming. But we shall see. Perhaps she will move up. That is certainly potential that it will happen. But yeah, that's basically what I think the Warrior meta is looking like at the moment. We're going to hop over to the Assassins next. And over in tier 2, I think I do have 1 in tier 5. Okay, so we've got 4 tiers here. So we've got Falstad, Jaina, Tracer, Valak, Healthyzad, Greymane, Li-Ming, Ragnaros, and Chromie. So I do have notes on my phone, by the way. I should have put them on the second screen. That would have made so much more sense and been more fluid. But I will be looking down just to check my notes for the points I want to talk about. In tier 3, we've got Genji, Kael'thas, Lunara, Thrall, Tychus, Zeratul, Nova, Cassia, Illidan, Kerrigan, Zul'jin, Samura, Gul'dan, and Malthael. It's a pretty big change here. Tier 4, we've got Gall, Junkrat, Alarak, Valera, the Butcher, and in tier 5 we have Raynor. Okay, so a good few things going on here actually. Let me see, where do I want to go first? Let's actually, we'll start up at the top. So again, I feel like with Assassins, and certainly I should mention with the Warriors, I feel like broadly speaking the Warrior tiers, one of the big strengths of Warriors is that they are quite, for example, comparing the Warriors to the Assassins here, it was tier 1 to 4 Warriors, whereas it's tier 2 to 5 with Assassins. I really do feel like Warriors are in a great spot right now, just to point that out. Assassins, though, they're quite balanced. I don't feel like there's any that particularly stand out as being overwhelmingly powerful, hence none in tier 1. So there's actually quite a bit of flexibility, quite a bit of counter picking, quite a bit of fitting it to the draft, to the team comp, and to the map, which is really the ideal of what you want with Assassins. So I think that is good. Things to point out. So first of all, in tier 2, I do think Ragnaros, despite repeated nerfs, is actually staying quite viable actually at the moment. Li-Ming, I've actually moved up for the first time in a very, very long time. Part of this is, of course, due to, if you look at those, the tank picks I was highlighting, ETC being back in the meta, Li-Ming obviously brings a very, very safe and easy counter to Mosh Pit, which is a pretty big deal. She's also a very safe assassin in her own right from these beefy, difficult to kill frontline tanks who bring a lot of crowd control. She's quite adept at avoiding that. She brings good burst damage, whereas they tend to have quite good physical armor, and burst damage can be quite effective at getting them down, that sort of element of surprise. So I do feel like the meta actually does suit Li-Ming quite well at the moment, being that sort of safe, magic, bursty damage dealer with long range. I do think it actually is going to suit her quite well. So I'm expecting her to move up a little bit in Hero League, whereas I think she's been, typically been fairly overrated in the past. I think she's probably going to be fairly decent at in the current patch. And yeah, I don't think there's any major surprises here. I don't think that the Assassins, like I said, have changed all that much. It's been more so the tanks and the supports that have changed quite substantially. Other things to point out here, though. Okay, we've got Lunara buffs, which is interesting. They buffed her Wisp a lot. So that will be a subtle thing. I don't think it will be exploited fully in Hero League, but it is a very nice change that people should be aware of. The Wisp is going to be much more usable now than it has been in the past. So that will add an interesting level of gameplay for Lunara players. Probably more relevant in your Team League games than in Hero League, but you never know. Another very, very substantial change has been Malthael. I have a video on Malthael due to come out very shortly as well. Malthael was actually nerfed substantially. They reduced, once again, the damage that his trait does. I think the overall damage output of his trait has been reduced now by 11%. Given that that's Malthael's main source of damage, that's a huge deal, right? That's a huge deal. And I actually expect Malthael, who has been extremely dominant, I think I've had him in tier 1 for quite a while now. I've actually moved him all the way down to tier 3. I think that I really can't understate how big of a nerf this feels like. And yeah, I'm not super convinced that Malthael is going to be a very strong pick. He's still going to be, he's still an average pick. He's still okay. He still has his role as, a good solo laner, a good, counter to very tanky teams. But I really do think that this nerf, although it looks small on paper, 2.25% max HP damage per second at 2%, that's actually a really big deal. That matters an awful lot in terms of the hero strength. We also have the Soul Jin rework in this particular patch. So, again, I'm not really sure where this rework is going. I have him in tier 3 right now, but I'm leaning towards more of the weaker side of Soul Jin. When I played it on PTR, I wasn't fully convinced by it. So I'm really not sure. I do feel like the talent, which sacrifices half of your HP and then puts it as a heal over time on you instead, could open up some really interesting play opportunities in terms of getting more value out of your trait and some of the other talents as well, like Guillotine, of course. Getting value out of those much more easily and much more self-sufficiently and on demand. That could be a pretty big deal, but I do feel like the damage nerfs to his just basic attack output and the cooldown on his twin cleave does feel somewhat problematic for me. So I'm not too sure about Zul'jin. Again, I do tend to feel like he might be a little bit weak, but not 100% sure. Again, I could be completely wrong on that one. I don't know. I didn't play much Zul'jin before either, but my impression was not massively favorable. Apart from that, oh yeah, okay, so the final one, of course, then, we've got Junkrat, right? The final sort of big placement, I would think, here. So tier 4, these are niche. These are ones that I think all these heroes can probably be quite good, but they're quite niche in terms of where they do fit in. So with Junkrat, he's such a strange hero. He really is so strange. I do feel like, honestly, he's more of a specialist, building into your suicide heroic, and then the mine that gives you tremendous map mobility is actually more effective. The mine build that lets you, just that one talent, I think it's level 13, that actually allows you to traverse the map quicker than you can on a mount. I think he probably has that gameplay then of being this reckless split pusher that can escape very easily, and even if he's going to be caught, will suicide and come back to the fight, and will just kind of pressure you down and be poking in, wave clearing very effectively. It is a very intriguing hero. I'm really unsure a little bit as to what his playstyle will be. However, from playing him on the PTR, one thing I did notice is obviously he's extremely vulnerable to being dived and being killed. He's very squishy. So, CC, any dive will be his nemesis. And what I felt as well was it's difficult. He doesn't do all that much damage in the team fight. He's more about sustained poke damage. When it comes to the actual team fight, I felt like his damage was a little bit lacking. He really does feel like a specialist to me in that sense, that he brings a lot of map play, but his team fighting is not really the best, which you would normally... Assassins are usually very good at team fighting, I would think. But yeah, that's sort of my take on him. Wasn't overly impressed by him. I felt like his damage output in most of the games was quite low. I feel like the poke is going to be quite weak against double support and these very tanky frontliners that will simply just ignore it. So I'm not thoroughly convinced by Junkrat, and I feel like this reckless split pushing mine build requires quite a lot of knowledge of the hero to make maximum use out of, because you need to know the limits of that build. So I'm not thoroughly convinced that we'll see many people. We will see some people, of course. We won't see a lot of people. It won't be super common for players to have nailed down exactly how that's played out, certainly within the first few days. But as always with a new hero, with any rework, this is a placement in progress, if you will. Once we get him into the live servers and we actually get to play him in Hero League games, that's when we'll get a real feel for where he's actually positioned. Again, this is speculative, but usually my rule of thumb is if I feel underwhelmed by a hero on PTR, that usually means that they're going to be underwhelming as well. And I felt somewhat I had an awful lot of fun, of course, you guys will. I think a lot of people enjoyed the video because I was having so much fun. It's very fun, but I didn't feel like he was very powerful. And yeah, there we go with the assassins. I'll jump over to specialists first. A couple of interesting things here at specialists. Okay, and in tier 2, so in tier 2 we've got Sylvanas and Zebo and Zagara. In tier 3 you've got Asmodan, Probius and Zul. In tier 4 we've got Medivh, Murky, Sergeant Hammer, Lost Vikings and Abathur. And in tier 5 we have Gazlo. So kind of unsurprising just by the nature of specialists that there's quite a few of them in the niche tier. Not too surprising there. Alright, so some of the big things that are happening in this particular patch. Number 1, Nazebo is very different now. I just did a video on Nazebo. I really do think that he's moved very solidly into Toad build as opposed to his old standard of Spider build. Certainly this is true for high levels of play. I know that Toad build is popular at all levels of play, but certainly high levels of play, it was only Spider build. You were trolling if you picked anything else. That's changed now. There have been numerous buffs to the Toad build, and there have been there's been one very large buff, the rework to the level 16 Spider talent. So Nazebo does play very differently. And I expect him to be quite good. He does, again, a surprising amount of AoE damage, a lot of AoE threat. Very strong in the late game, especially strong in the late game. And I think that tailors well to the way Hero League is played. You know, it tailors well to how Hero League is played, where games aren't as coordinated and they tend to go late. So kind of this crazy AoE damage all over the place, and a late game hero tends to thrive. Another very interesting hero is Zagara. So I was ready to hype Zagara to the max and have her in tier 1 as possibly even like the hero to watch out for. She's been extremely dominant in my experience in a lot of the European games at high levels, in Hero League, that is specifically. The thing with Zagara is that she is an extremely powerful early lane hero. She's a solo lane hero that's ranged, and she has very good matchups into most of the popular solo lane heroes. She can simply, because most of the popular solo laners are melee, she can simply kite them, she outpushes them, and she has this very oppressive map presence. She gets her vision spread out quite a lot. Then she's got the global at level 10. All these things have combined, I feel, to make Zagara extremely appealing. Now, in this particular patch, she has been nerfed down. Her HP has been reduced to try to mitigate some of that, to give her some more weaknesses. I think Zagara will still be very strong because of that unique flavor that she brings. That squishy range solo lane dominant hero, I think, is a very valuable thing to bring to Hero League in particular. A lot of people still not comfortable playing those matchups, and they're just going to lose even harder than they normally would by attempting to win something that they can't. So I really do feel like Zagara is definitely a hero to watch, but she has been nerfed down a bit, so she's not as dominant as she was, you know, a week or two ago. Apart from that, we do have a Probius buff. So I think Probius is a fairly solid tier 3 hero now, overall, I would think. And I've moved Abathur down a little bit then, because we did have an Abathur nerf. 20 seconds extra cooldown on his clone, which is a pretty big deal. It went from 50 seconds to 70 seconds. I think that is enough for me to move him down into this much more niche hero in tier 4. Much more punishing in terms of how you use the clone. A much larger window for counterplay. So yeah, I think he goes down to tier 4 for me. Again, tier 4 heroes still can be good, can be very good, but they are quite dependent on team comps and on maps, more so than other heroes would be. It's basically what that means. Right, now to hop over to the role that is very in flux in my opinion. Very in flux, which is the support role. This is such an interesting one, because Blizzard made such sweeping changes to the supports recently. They've nerfed a lot of the ones that were dominant. So Rehgar, his chain heal's been nerfed, so now it's a purely AoE heal, and no longer gives you that bonus single target heal to your initial target, which is a pretty big deal. They've obviously nerfed Uther down. On top of that, they've made some pretty big changes to buffing a whole bunch of other heroes. They buffed Brightwing, they buffed Karazim, they buffed Morales, which are really shaking up the meta in a very big way, I would think. And then in this patch, they've nerfed down a bunch of those heroes. Like, for example, Lieutenant Morales got major buffs. And I know a lot of high-level players, I think particularly in North America, were highlighting Morales as one of the very, very best heroes in Hero League in that particular patch. However, my experience in Europe was that there was really no awareness of this. No one was playing Morales. And then, before I even got, for myself, a proper sense of just how strong she was or wasn't, they went and nerfed her. So I'm still kind of unsure as to exactly where supports are. But we've had a few fairly major changes, like I've said. So in this patch, let's talk about Anna, who's the newest one first. My notes, my phone keeps locking. I definitely need it up on the second screen. Yeah, so let's talk about Anna first. So I think it's actually quite a substantial nerf to Anna, which has made her quite niche, in my opinion, because she's very difficult to play. The nano boost, I think they need to make it more obvious when someone is nano boosted. You see a lot of wasted nano boosts, that sort of thing. But the big change to her, they changed her level 4 talent, which it used to be 2 stacks of her poison applied on grenade and on sleep dart. They've changed it to now only apply 3 stacks, but only on sleep dart. So it doesn't apply on grenade anymore, which is a massive nerf to her because grenade is much more consistent. And with the talent that reduced spell damage and the talent that boosted your healing per each application of poison, having 2 applications of poison on your grenade was a very consistent way to apply very meaningful buffs and debuffs in the team fight. You know, every hero hit by your grenade, that was 30% less damage from all of their abilities for 5 seconds. That was a massive deal. That's gone now. And I feel like that makes Anna much weaker, actually, in my opinion. So I'm not too impressed with her in Hero League at the moment. I think she's very niche, and yeah, just not thoroughly convinced by her. Let's talk about some of the nerfs. So Morales, again, got a lot of nerfs. I'm not super sure where she ends up, but I think probably in about tier 3 will probably be about right, but again, not 100% sure about that one. Stukov also received some pretty huge nerfs. He's a lot squishier now than he was before. So yeah, again, Stukov is another hero that I was even considering moving up. I think he will sort of remain here in tier 3 thanks to those nerfs that he did receive. One hero that I'm thinking might move up actually is Karazim, who's received a few buffs recently. So Karazim may be one to move up. That's definitely a hero I'm keeping my eye on. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure what to make of him. Again, he's not been very popular recently in the games that I've been playing, so I haven't had much experience to see him in action. But he has received some buffs, particularly to Insight and to Transcendence. So those are the 2 builds that weren't at higher levels seeing any play. It was all about Iron Fists. Now his other 2 potential talents at level 1 have been buffed quite a bit. So perhaps we are going to see more of Karazim. So he's one definitely to keep an eye on. I think Lucio is actually quite strong right now and definitely underrated. I think Rhaegar, in terms of, you know, the standard supports that have been meta for quite a while, is currently the best one out of those standard supports, just because of his flexibility, good wave clear, good damage to mercs, good damage to objectives, decent kill pressure, AoE healing, burst healing, cleanse. He kind of brings everything. So Rhaegar does still stand out to me as being particularly strong among supports. I think Tastar is still very good. Tyrande, I consider a ranged assassin, not a support. Basically, she's a ranged assassin, very good at team fighting, very weak at wave clear and objectives. So take it as you will. And then Brightwing is another interesting one that, again, I cautiously placed her in the previous tier list, feeling like they were pretty large buffs to her teleport build, was what we saw last time. And I was kind of figuring that Brightwing might even emerge very powerfully into the meta. However, Blizzard went and they've nerfed her. They've nerfed her down a little bit. So I'm not entirely sure where she's going to end up. I've left her in tier 2. I think that Brightwing is probably still something of an untapped potential with the changes that they have made to her. Especially the teleport thing being much more powerful now. How that could enhance certain heroes, you know, like Tracer, for example, who I think is a very good assassin at the moment. Tracer plus Brightwing. You've got options there that are quite interesting. So yeah, I do think that Brightwing actually is probably a little bit underrated, and there's good potential for Brightwing to be in this particular meta, but we shall see exactly what those nerfs entail. But yeah, so I'm quite up in the air in terms of supports. I feel like there's been an awful lot of changes, and I'm not entirely sure where it's going to end up. This is my best guess, but as you can see, there's, you know, it's over the last 2 major patches, that's an awful lot of changes. So yeah, I'm not super sure where they're all going to end up, but this is my best guess in terms of them. So look at the overall... Oh, by the way, Varian is tier 3, I reckon. Probably tier 3. So to look at the overall tier list right then, right at the end, we've got tier 1. We've got a lot of these strong, big, tanky warriors with lots of CC and pretty decent damage and kill pressure as well, which I feel is going to have a big impact on the meta. And then we've got this big shake-up to the support heroes, and which are strong. So I think if you are fond of either of those particular roles, and you've got pocket picks, one of your favorite heroes has been changed, this is going to be a very good patch for you to get to try those things out and to have, a really nice impact on your game, catch some people by surprise and make some really nice plays. So this is what it's looking at like overall. Again, the warriors in tier 1, tier 2, these are just, I think, strong heroes. Overall, we've got quite a good mix, I would say, in terms of, beefy tanks, solo laners, we've got burst mages, we've got sustained damage as well, a variety of healers. There's quite a variety in tier 2 actually, which I think is quite nice. Tier 3 also, again, we've got a substantial amount of heroes right here. Tier 4 we got some more niche heroes, and then tier 5 I think Gasso and Reyna I feel like are a little bit weaker than other heroes. They might work okay in some Hero League games, but they just have very staggering weaknesses, just being very immobile and kind of predictable. But I mean, maybe. It doesn't mean never ever play them, but you want a very good reason to. And yeah, that's what it looks like. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the tier list, and let me know what you thought of the structure. Did you enjoy having those particular talking points, the notes? So that's something I haven't really done before, so maybe that added more of a focus to the video. I don't know. You can let me know in the comments below. Let me know what you think of the changes as well. You can be sad with me over Malthael too. And I'm very curious to see exactly how this patch pans out. Because like I said, I feel like there's some pretty major changes over the last few weeks, really, which are going to shake up the meta quite a bit, which it's nice and refreshing and interesting that this is probably going to be the one for BlizzCon. So yeah, give it a thumbs up if you liked it. And I'll see you guys for live streams every weekday, I should say, every weekday. And plenty more Heroes of the Storm content coming up very soon. So yeah, see you guys all very soon. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.